Hi everyone, a very quick video here for you, just looking at highlights on noses. And as an example, we've got Amy here from a recent High Key studio day. And we're going to take a look at going from this here, which is an edited picture, and just, if you can see, a very subtle change there on that nose highlights. If I flick between the two again, you can see a little bit on the bright side there, and just taking that down. I'm doing this in Lightroom. I'm going to show it not only in Lightroom, but also my favorite option, which is actually going from Lightroom into Photoshop as well. So let's take a look at it. So here we are in Lightroom. It's not the ideal program really to use for this, but I will show you if you're not happy in Photoshop or something like Affinity Photo, then I'll show you one way we can look at this. But like I say, it's not ideal. Let's duplicate this first of all. Virtual copy. And for anything like this, we do want to zoom in. So you could play with a highlight slider, but that's going to affect everything else, just to show you, you know, that's really not ideal, is it? So naturally we would want to come up to the masking brush. So we'll go to masking and go to brush, and you can try burning that in, okay? The problem with that is that it can be a little bit uneven. Just a quick move by that and you can see that it's really awful. You can try toning things down, but it's not perfect. So let's delete that. The quickest and easiest way, and to get something reasonable, is really to not go with a brush, but to go with the radial gradient. So if we pull out a radial gradient over the nose, make sure there's lots of feather on this as well. And line it up. Get that middle gradient where the hotspot is, and then we can start adding some negative exposure. So if I take that down, because it's way too much, it only needs a little bit. Okay, so we're going to double click on that just to bring it to 0, and just slowly just darken it down a little bit. Once you're happy with what you've got on the highlight there, you can start to just move this around and just check whether you need it a little bit thinner. If there's too much in the way of shadows coming down the sides of the nose there, then you know, just alter it until you're happy with it. So if we turn it off and on, you can see it does darken up here at the top. So we're gonna just bring that in a little bit there. Keep turning it off and on until you're happy. So I still think that's a bit too dark, so I'm just going to bring that up a little bit. And that just takes that hot spot off. And you could turn around and say, well, you know, it's getting a little bit dark still at the sides, but turn it on and then just give it a minute or two. If you're not sure, walk away from it and then come back while it's still on like that and say, actually, yeah, that looks natural. I'm more than happy with that, and it's taken that hot spot down. So that's the way I would do this within Lightroom. Let me show you how I'd also look at things within Photoshop, or if you're using Affinity Photo. So if we go back to our original one here, and we will take a virtual copy of that, and then we're going to open that up by editing into Photoshop. So here in Photoshop, this is the way I'd normally do this. I work with a finished face so that we've got some smooth transitions here. And we're going to cut and paste a patch that we can actually feed in using a brush and a layer mask. And the patch itself doesn't have to be any particular shape, as long as it will cover the nose. And if it doesn't cover the nose, then you know, we're going to look at actually making that a little bit bigger with the transform tool. So just taking the marquee tool or the lasso, it can be anything, because like I say, it can be any size you want. We do want something that's going to be a similar tone here, so it wouldn't be coming down here. We're going to go with this area here. So just take more than you need. We can go something like that, make it really messy, okay? and then make sure we're on the background, which is what it's come in as, and we're going to press Command or Control on the Windows machine J, and that copies and pastes that actual selection. So there you go, you can see that there. So I'm making sure this selection or layer is highlighted. You press Command or Control T, and we can now move this around and spin it and make it bigger. And like I say, if something's not big enough to cover it, you can just pull it out if you need to and get the sort of feel of what you want on there. So that should be more than enough. And we have light coming from the right hand side, just falling to the left there. So looking at this, we're going to turn this around because that's kind of like the natural gradient coming in there, albeit we wouldn't have much of a gradient to work on here, and it's going to be so subtle that that's not going to really matter too much. So just make sure we're where we need to be, which is about there. I'm going to double click that to set it, and then we're going to bring in a layer mask. So if we come down to add layer mask, press Alt as we click on that, and that will bring in a black layer mask, so it will be hidden, and all we've got to do with a white brush is paint that in. So going over to the brush, which is B on the keyboard, make sure down here in the palette we have white selected, and always with this make sure you're working with zero hardness, so we've got lots of feathering going on. And let's get that brush size up. Remember, there's feathering in that, and we want a very, very low opacity. So at the moment we're on 100, so I'm going to bring that down to about 20%, which is 2 on the keyboard, and that will set that to 20. And then let's see what happens. Remember, we're working with a mask, so we can always reverse this. Yeah, that's about right. Look, we're going to put one click there. That's the nose sorted out. I've already gone down once there, so let's just add another little stroke. We turn that mask off and on. You can see I've gone over a little bit here, so all we've got to do is switch this to black and just sort these shadows out, just clicking and dragging. Don't forget it's 20%, so we just build up accordingly. Just turn it off and on. Yeah, still not happy here. That feathering is just still taking effect as I'm trying to take it out. Off and on. Now you could say we'll just use a smaller brush, but I tend to like to overdo things then cut back with the brush. There we go. Again, what I said before in Lightroom, if you're not sure, just give it a minute or two, walk away from the screen, come back, just look at it and say, yeah, that doesn't look like it's been, worked in Photoshop or anything like that. The idea is just for a natural effect and just getting rid of that hotspot. So once that's done, you can take that back into Lightroom, or if you were working in Photoshop, because this works just purely for Photoshop as well, as we've seen here, just save and you're ready to go. Hope you find that really useful. It's good on all hotspots, including the T part of the forehead or on the chin. Very easy way to take skin that's very similar in the face and the same lighting and start to patch things around where things get just a little bit hot. Just one final note on that, I do sometimes work in Portrait Pro. With Amy here, she quite likes a highlighter on the nose. It's not always a case of taking out highlights. And remember, highlights are highlights. That doesn't mean they're always white, and sometimes a highlight is required. You may not want it to be pure white. So Portrait Pro, you actually do have for the nose a highlight tool to add highlights. So the idea is to bring the bridge of the nose forward and make a slimming effect on the nose. So if you start pushing this back too much, you can actually have a feeling of fattening up the nose on a person, and that can be pretty bad depending on who the person is. Isn't so bad with Amy here. She's got a lovely slim face, slim nose, so it's not as important with someone like Amy here. Hope you've enjoyed that. Please remember to subscribe and do hit the like button if you found this useful. Many thanks.